Can, can you hear me, sir?
Yes, I can hear
Okay.
you.
Okay, sir. Okay, sir.
I just didn't care about that.
Good evening, ladies and gentlemen. Apologies, we are starting a little late this evening. We were just getting over some technical issues. Apologies for the technical issues, sir.
Good evening. I suppose the whole world is getting into a disarray. So we are probably not immune from that.
I will ensure that we adjust that, sir. Definitely for our viewers who are online. I will adjust that, sir. Definitely, sir. At least we're sure that Putin has not blown up anything that would affect our program. So that is still intact. Thank you very much, sir, once again. Um, Sir, I'm going to start on another on a topic that you've talked about so many times, but it keeps something just keeps happening. It's almost become a weekly thing, and that is the potential coup attempt. I know there has been some word in some quarters that maybe it was not a coup, but in yet another African country. You spoke about it extensively. How do you react to this new piece of information, sir?
Well, there is a saying um, that if you keep doing the same thing as a reaction to an event and it doesn't work, and you still keep repeating the same thing, that is a sign of insanity. For ECOWAS to put on that long playing record of we condemn this, we condemn that, we put on sanctions. The sanctions don't work, your condemnation doesn't work, then there's something wrong with ECOWAS. I mean, we know the problems, the coups or coup attempts and what have you. And all because ECOWAS does not focus on good governance. It does not seek to correct bad governance. It has this knee-jerk reaction to those who then respond who then respond to bad governance. His soldiers are saying they are not paid. They are sent to the front without weapons, without food ration. I mean, it was Napoleon who said an army don't fight on empty stomachs. So, what do you want those soldiers to do? To simply go there and die while politicians, through corrupt practices, are feeding fat on the Commonwealth? No wonder people turn out to welcome these soldiers. And yet, all ECOWAS does is to focus on coup attempts and not to speak the truth to themselves. Maybe I am being naive that I will expect sitting heads of states behind closed doors to say, you can't do this. In Cote d'Ivoire, present regime, without even amending the constitution, but through interpretation, went in for a third term. Elections were held, which the opposition criticized in very stringent terms. ECOWAS was silent. In what has happened in, is it Guinea-Bissau? You know, these names get confusing. The present attempt, the election that was held there was not free and fair, according to the opposition. Now, maybe we shouldn't expect that any opposition will accept the result of an election that it has lost, although it was done in Nigeria by the last president, and kudos to him. That's good luck, Jonathan. I doff my hat to him. But in how many countries in West Africa do you have that? Now, has ECOWAS considered a protocol that actually allows elections to be conducted by an ECOWAS body, rather than the ECOWAS just serving as observers? I regard observers really as autopsy after death. It serves no purpose. Nobody reads the report and nobody implements the report. I can cite many examples where the observers have stopped serving any good purpose. So it is good governance that we must now focus on. Good governance. And if you think that you have carried out a coup, or its population will listen to some highfalutin words coming from Accra, Ghana, or wherever the capital of the incumbent chairman of ECOWAS, you're just fooling yourselves. It didn't work in Burkina Faso. It didn't work in Chad. It didn't work in Niger. It didn't work in. Why do you think it didn't work in Guinea? Why do you think anybody will listen? Because the problems, the core problem is not the coup itself. It's what has bred the coup, what has led to the coup. And I think frankly, the probably the wisest thing that the president of Ghana, in his capacity, as chairman of FEC, is that this is creeping on. It's like a boil that you do nothing about, and you expect it to go away simply because you blow hot air into it. It won't. It will grow. It will spread as long as the problems remain the same thing: bad governance, corruption, elections that lack credibility.
Sir, let us look at Burkina Faso and what has happened there, because I think this might present a challenge for foreign policy. And this is the fact that there has been the announcement that the coup leader has now been appointed president, even though they say for a transitional period. But they are saying that they have restored the constitution of the country. How do you deal with that from a foreign policy perspective? Do you now take this coup leader a week ago and now start relating with that coup leader as a president?
We could play legal games. In my own country, Nigeria, the first thing the, the coup leader announced is not the abolition of the constitution, but that certain sections of the constitution have been suspended, not even abolished, suspended. And so you have all these legal games, just in case there are legal challenges before the Supreme Court or before the ECOWAS court, as it may be now, or maybe before the International Criminal Court at The Hague. So you've got smart lawyers, constitutional lawyers, who would then play that fine game. So when you get before the court, you could say, we still have our constitution. We didn't abolish it. We suspended it. It's only certain sections. So what they've done in Burkina Faso is to say, well, we have our constitution back, but that section dealing with the president being elected, we've suspended it, and is the coup leader who is temporarily running the affairs of state. And sooner or later, if he's not overthrown, you will just accept the inevitability of not having a vacuum at the executive level. But someone was speaking on a television program, and he said, I don't subscribe to all these conspiracy theories that there are always forces behind political events in Africa or elsewhere. And I said, you only just have to read your history. The truth does come out eventually. I mean, it took 20 years for the truth to come out about the coup in Ghana in 1966. 20 years it took before we then found out which foreign forces were actually behind that coup d'etat. But at that time, as a postgraduate student, I myself didn't buy into, somebody else was behind it, and so until the truth. So the issues, the chess game being played out now in West Africa. Of course, there will always be vultures where there are dead bodies. Don't expect that there will not be foreign forces who will be interested in development in all this because there are mineral resources there. Nobody is ever interested in a country that has nothing to be exploited. It reminds me of Lee Kuan Yew of Singapore, dead. No, Singapore is not dead, it's Lee Kuan Yew. But they asked him at one time, how did Singapore manage to escape the radar of the big powers and became from third world to first world? How did he do it? He said, we had nothing that anybody was interested in. So there was no point paying any attention to us. Number two, rejected every proposal made to us by the World Bank, by the IMF, by all these international financial institutions. He said, and number three, all of us in the cabinet, myself included, those are his words, went to Oxford or Cambridge or London School of Economics. So we could all read from the same page. He said that was how we escaped and became, without having any natural resources, an economic superpower in the world. The unfortunate thing about Africa is that it has an abundance of of mineral resources that the rest of the world is determined that the Africans themselves will not have control of. I gave an example, I think about 2 or 3 weeks ago, that France has no gold mines in its territory, but it has the largest resources of gold reserves in a central bank. Mali has one of the largest gold mines in the world and has no gold reserves in its own bank. Now that must be telling you something. So there you are. That's what is happening in West Africa. No, but the United States a few years ago called Guinea-Bissau. I think that's the latest place where this coup attempt just took place. A narco country. In other words, a country being run by narcotic forces. People who were exporting, it was a transit point between South America and Europe for the export of cocaine, hashish, narcotics. And they even went as far as arresting the head of the navy of that country. And the conflict in that country had been between a government, forces within its armed forces, and some members of the elite who are into these narcotic drugs. And the United States has not even been able to control narcotic forces within its own territory, in spite of all the resources it has at its disposal. How will a little West African country be able to control narcotic drugs? So you have all this interplay of forces taking place in West Africa.
Let's move a little bit up north, sir, as we look at the breaking news this week that South Korea was selling arms to Egypt. What is your take on this? It seems a bit odd from the layman's perspective, but how do you interpret such a move from South Korea and Egypt and the relationship that they're trying to build there?
Well, the news is even more expansive than that because it's not only Egypt is not only buying those weapons. South Korea has agreed to set up or to allow Egypt to set up manufacturing military industries that will be manufacturing South Korean military equipment. Now, I read this on several levels. Number one, rather than have to fight the American Congress, where one senator could veto sale of arms or delivery of arms that you have paid for, you look at another country that is not going to be um, interfering in your internal affairs, but simply regard the sale of weapons as a purely commercial exercise. You pay for it, we deliver it. So it is in the interest of Egypt to look for a medium country, medium power country, that it could have that kind of symbiotic beneficial relationship with. We will buy some, then you will empower us to manufacture others in our own country. Smart move, by the way. I recall there was one country in Africa that will remain unnamed who ordered and paid for, I think, about 15 naval vessels from one country instead of 5 or 7, and insisting that, especially since it had a lot of ports where dockyards could be built, that the other should be developed in its own country. The same country bought, shipping vessels so that it will a naval, civilian ships completely from this country and paid for the thing to be delivered. And they were delivered. Now, all those ships have been sold off because they were badly managed and badly run. It is playing a smart game. I will also not be surprised if, to counter the development in North Korea, with a wink and nod from the United States, South Korea is being allowed to build up its defense manufacturing capability. And one of the ways to do this is to manufacture more than you, sell them, and then from the resources you made from that, you actually gone to stage 2 of development of weapons. Number 3, we've said it on this program. There is the movement to develop a new world order, and it's like not a chess game. It's like this I've forgotten what you call it. You have a big board and each person is trying to put, you know, uh,
Jigsaw puzzle?
help me. What do you call that? Hmm?
Jigsaw puzzle?
Jigsaw puzzle. Thank you very much. You are a young man. Jigsaw puzzle. And everybody, at least if you are going to regard yourself as a serious nation, once you sit at that table, so you are putting your own puzzles there where you think it fits, where others are also putting their in. So Egypt and South Korea are also medium power countries, are involved in this exercise of having a seat table, of constructing a new world order. That's my read on those um, arms manufacturing sales.
Thank you for that, sir. While we talk about this new world order, I remember that some months back now, there was the story of the Turkish president going to Russia. And if I recall correctly, you said at the time, let's just watch that relationship. It's a dating relationship that you were not sure would end up in marriage, but let's watch it. But then there was an event that happened this week where the Turkish prime minister has then, president, sorry, has then decided to sign a trade deal with Ukraine. What impact do you think that will have on Turkey's relationship with Russia?
This may be the first little toe progress, not a complete foot, a little toe progress in an opening towards resolving the Ukraine crisis. Um, because I believe that uh, Putin may have now realized that he's bit more than he could chew. And in diplomacy, you will be looking for an interlocutor that will help you blink without a loss of face. Let me, please remind me of this point because I want to step back a week and explain why, if you like, because it was wrong. A week ago on this program, you asked me what were my fears on Ukraine. And I, if that I thought war may break out this week. And now we are towards the end of the 1 week, and war had been broken out. Was I being overly alarmist? And the answer will have to be, well, maybe yes or no. What has happened between the time I said what I said and now is that actually the United States and NATO had recognized that they were wrong to have taken the military option off the table at the very beginning of their negotiation with Putin. They realized it. And through the back door, they have now reintroduced. If you recall, I don't know how many weeks that was, I was saying that if I were Biden, I will send the American 82nd Division which is based in Fort Bragg. That's really the interventionist arm of American military response to a crisis. I said, I would have sent it to Europe. Now, this week, elements of that 82nd Division are being dispatched to Europe, to some of the frontline countries, not Ukraine itself, but some of the frontline European NATO members aborting Russia, so that Russia will know that if it goes into Ukraine, it may be exposing a flank of itself. And now Putin, a smart fellow, now knows that there is now a military option from the United States and from NATO that's on the table. So he may not be for a way to walk back his troops. And listening to somebody like like President Erdogan of Turkey may just be that way out. He has a good relationship. There's a good relationship between Turkey and Russia, but there's also a good relationship between Turkey and Ukraine. Recall that couple of years ago, Turkey actually sold drones to Ukraine that Ukraine then used against the dissident elements that Russia had encouraged. And that was a very strong condemnation from Russia on that matter. Well, on this trip, within the past 24 hours, Turkey has said it's prepared to sell more drones to Ukraine. And it has condemned Russian military moves. So in a way, it has played what I would regard as a brilliant interlocutory position. No, not putting itself forward as an agent of NATO, although it's a member of NATO, but at the same time, not putting his foot forward as a friend of Russia, although it is a friend of Russia. And Putin may just be prepared to use that as an excuse, with wings and not encourage him to get more engaged and then to pull back from this position where it was. Finally, let me draw one more lesson. And this should be of interest to all policymakers. When the Soviet Union broke up, Ukraine had, at that time, I had the third or the fourth largest possession of nuclear weapons. Ukraine, left in its territory by the Soviet Union, under its ownership, and under international guarantee, Ukraine surrendered those nuclear weapons. Under international guarantee. I think that was at a conference in 1994 or so. Where is that guarantee now when you need it? There is an existential threat to Ukraine. What good? What good is that international guarantee? The same way they got Gaddafi to surrender his nuclear program. I didn't say nuclear weapons. I say it's nuclear. And as soon as he has surrendered it, they went after him and took him out. So the next time international guarantors come calling on your policy maker. Remind them of what's happened to Ukraine. Remind them of what happened to Gaddafi. And I believe that that is why North Korea is not listening to guarantee from anybody for him to wipe off his nuclear program and nuclear weapons, which he has now, in exchange for what? Governments come, governments change, governments go, and guarantees get forgotten. They are not worth the paper they are often signed on.
But, sir, on this point of guarantee, some may argue that when you look at Ukraine, Poland, and the UK, and you look at the leader of the prime minister of Ukraine, then talking about a trilateral relationship, and potentially fleshing out this arrangement into maybe something more substantial in the future, as long as this Russian aggression is there. Uh, Surely, to an extent, that could also be that guarantee that is starting to kick in, um, even though it might be informal.
With all due respect, will Boris Johnson sacrifice London by bombing Moscow because Moscow invaded Ukraine? Putin will have Poland for breakfast and have enough time to deal with other matters. So, any trilateral arrangement between England, Poland, and Ukraine, with all due respect, that arrangement is not worth the paper on which it is written, unless it kicks in NATO, because two of the members of this trilateral arrangement are members of NATO. And will NATO come in without the United States coming in? Without the United States, NATO is nothing. Uh, Putin does not fear NATO without the United States. So in a way, when they talk about NATO this, NATO that, it's really a mask. Well, this is the season of masks, whether it's COVID-19 masks or NATO masks. It's really just a mask of the United States coming in. And that's why I said earlier on that under some backdoor NATO justification, the United States is bringing in troops into Europe. It's so that it will be in a position, should any of should NATO feel threatened, to immediately kick its own contribution to that. But I mean, everybody knows. And that is why Putin is more interested in talking to the Americans than talking to anybody in NATO. How many times has the American Secretary of State talked to the Russian foreign minister? I mean, you will really think that that hotline was installed specifically for the two. Meetings, telephone conversations between Putin and Biden outrun meetings with other European leaders. Now, I'm too, as a diplomat, if I may say so, or as a scholar in diplomacy, to know that meetings with every other president helps in the sense that it shows your people, see how important we are. Today it is Boris Johnson on the phone. Next day it is this man visiting. Next day it is this coming in. See, and that's one of the things that Putin wanted. He felt after the dissolution of the Soviet Union, Russia lost status. Russia lost respect. And he now believes, with the attention being paid Russia, under him, Russia is gaining back that respect. It's now almost being treated, as almost on the same level as the United States. It's like we're back to the days of the Cold War, where if America sneezes, everybody shivers. Russia sneezes, everybody shivers. It's like we're almost back there. So to that extent, all this attention being paid to Moscow does serve a purpose. But strategically and militarily, the important one is between Russia and the United States.
So let me pick you up on the United Kingdom there, and the fact that Boris Johnson had this phone call. And really, my question here is this. If the call from the US, all the foreign policy maneuvers from the US did not stop this build-up in Ukraine, um, why would Russia listen to the United Kingdom?
Humor him. Boris Johnson has enough problems of his own. You dare not have a nap in Britain now without missing some domestic development, some tripping over his own shoes by Boris Johnson. Whether it's lying to Parliament, whether it's the insult meted out to the leader of opposition, whether it's the drip, drip, drip resignation of his top uh, uh, advisors, whether it's tripping over that time bomb which he planted on Brexit in Northern Ireland. I mean, so he probably just humored the man so that they don't say, you ignored me. After I offered to speak to you. I don't think that Putin for one moment thought Boris Johnson had any important or useful thing to say.
Thank you for that, sir. Before I move to the Middle East, there is a comment here on YouTube from one of our viewers. I believe you have answered this, but in the spirit of the program, I want to put the question to you. And this person is referring to the fact that, and you said it a number of times, coups are happening because of bad governance and things like that. But this person is saying, are there signs African countries can mitigate military coups through good governance?
Well, recall that 2 or 3 weeks ago, we did play the games of numbers. How many coups there have been in Africa versus how many African countries there have been. Not so many coups I've been in ECOWAS region versus the number of ECOWAS countries. And I did say no need to panic yet. However, there is always a danger of copycatism, where even where you have good governance, the military may still be tempted to cover, may still be tempted to copy their fellow brothers in khaki in other countries. And that is really why, coups are like, what's this medical term for this? That you need to be careful if you're a diabetic patient. If you do get that little toe, if you don't quickly address it, you are likely to get the whole leg cut off eventually. So I can understand why one coup is one coup too many. Not to now talk of a region where finance is an aberration. Don't let us kid ourselves. It's in every country in West Africa where there is bad governance that there has been a coup. Oh no. But we are not going to allow our program to be accused of encouraging what have you by mentioning names of countries where bad governance is still the order of the day, whether in Africa or in West Africa. So there you are. There is still, I gave out a suggestion that number one, ECOWAS should develop a habit of talking to its own fellow heads of state where they violate their own constitution. Number two, ECOWAS may start to think, it doesn't mean they'll do it next week or next month, a protocol where they invite the election conducting body in Ghana to conduct elections in Guinea. They invite election conducting body in Togo to do. Again, I'm just throwing this out. I'm just taking on top of my head because I will quickly have to mend that by saying the election conducting bodies that you are inviting in must have a credibility image. They must have conducted free and fair elections where they are coming from. There are several African countries whom I wouldn't touch. They are independent national electoral body with a batch poll. There'd be nothing independent about them and nothing credible about their conduct. But if ECOWAS were to set up a body of experts to help it think through details of a protocol that meet bad governance and thereby give the citizens patience to let this good governance generate results rather than resorting to the military option. The military may not be able to solve it. I'm not saying that the military is the solution. In fact, in a lot of African countries where the military has been, in only very few have the military actually succeeded in delivering the goods for reasons which again we have spoken about on this program. African leaders are never left alone. And if they look like they're about to deliver the goods, coups will be engine against them. Europe, the developed countries don't want Africa to succeed. There are sufficient tapes on the internet now which explain why that will not be allowed to happen. Because Europe continues to need access to the resources of Africa to maintain its own standard of living. And the more Africa gets itself on its own resources, the less will be available for Europe.
So there are two questions here, or 2 points that I want to pass to you. Maybe we'll do Middle East next week. But what this person is saying here is, what is the downside of just one-term governments? So rather than governments becoming entrenched in, I have another term to go, that maybe politicians will then focus on doing good within their one term. What's your view on that, sir?
Term limitation is an American thing. It's not synonymous with democracy. France has 2 terms, but each term 7 years each. In a lot of African countries, it's just 1 term, 4 years. What can you do in 4 years? You spend maybe 2 years getting your blueprint ready. The 3rd year, you are then planting the policies, and maybe by the 4th year, you're just starting to germinate. England has no term limit, and yet that is a democratic country. So in a way, Africa has, if you like, 3 options or 3 models. Examine the American model, which I will stick out my neck to say the American model is really not amenable to African growth, in the sense that the United States for 200 years has been building up its own system and its own development. And each presidential term is just icing on the cake. Whereas in Africa, you are just starting to bake the cake. Therefore, I will rule out the American model ab initio, and I will take a look at the French and the British model. You'll recall the British model is actually practiced in a lot of Commonwealth countries, at least the serious one. India, Pakistan, Malaysia. I don't know how the American model crept into Africa. I think it's through the military regimes who they meant well. They were looking for, they were disgusted with the behavior of the civilians that they overthrew. And so they thought, and some of them, American advisors, had access to them, that why not try the American model? I will have continued with the British model, frankly. I think we should go back to that. But if we can't go back to the parliamentary system, then let us try the French model. 2 terms of a French president is 14 years. I am sure, and yet that is again France, that's a fairly structured, built-up system that has add-on by the successes or failures of presidential terms. So anyway, those are the 2 terms I would recommend to Africa. I think any African nation with good governance of 14 years will have made it and will make it. 14 years of bad governance, it won't kill it. So that would be my answer to that.
Okay, so the last question. This person says, when the Arab Spring came, it was like Hamatan fire. The ECOWAS Spring doesn't have any force of wind behind it. Indigenous people are more concerned with self-determination. What is your take on that comment, sir?
Surely you don't want me to address that thing. I don't know how many minutes we have left. I know where that questionnaire is coming from. I don't mean I know who is sending it, but I know the whole debate on, self-determination for indigenous people.
Okay.
But
let's start next week with it.
I can spend 1 hour defining the self in the self-determination. We don't have enough time now.
Okay, I will start the program next week with that question, sir. On that note, thank you once again, sir, for your time this evening. And to our viewers, thank you for being there. I can see we have quite a lot here. Someone just pointing out, sir, that France has reduced their tenure to 5 years now, and that it's no longer 7, that it's now down to 5. But thank you to our viewers for being there, and sir, thank you very much as usual. We'll see you next week.
Wakanda.
Good night, sir.